Hey guys, so as you'll probably notice, my background is a little different today. Um, as the song stated, I'm reporting not live, but from Atlanta. Not Decatur though. Um, so my background playlist today will be a bunch of songs by artists from Georgia. Okay, so if you remember from my last video, weeks ago. I know what I promised. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to promise again. I'm just going to try to do better. Um, but as you all remember from that video, I said that the next two videos I would be doing would be about my dating, um, and how un, I don't want to say uninteresting, but well, interesting, but not productive. So very unproductive my dating life has been, and then also a story about you know turning 21. So this one is the dating video. So about 2 years ago now, wow, early 2016, I joined this dating app, and it was a weird experience because even when I joined it, I was still one of the people who kind of like made faces about people on dating apps, just like, oh really, like that's so weird. But nothing else is going for me, so I decided to give it a try. And all the conversations I had, they'd kind of fizzle out after a time. So sorry, so they'd fizzle out after a time, and it's just it didn't seem to be going anywhere. There was actually one person who I continued speaking to until fairly recently, but I mean like a 2 year conversation, pretty good. But it was like a friendship until we get to, let me see, summer of 2016. So I meet this guy. I won't tell you his name, but he's got a new nickname for me, which you'll understand in the process of the story. I call him Domino's. My friends and we all do. Whenever we're referring to him. So I met Domino's. He seemed cool enough. My friends they weren't too keen on his appearance, but that's not the most important thing. That's something that I do, I like to know about. Like, I always ask my friends for like a general description of a guy. They're pretty good at being unbiased, like, okay, blonde hair, blue eyes, or black hair, brown eyes, you know, almond shaped. Like, they're actually pretty good at being descriptive, but unbiased. And that's what they usually do. And then I'm like, all right, so what do you personally think of him? And they're they're usually brutally honest, but obviously it's something like I like to know, as I said, but it's not imperative. Um, so talking to this person, they were not too keen on his appearance. One of my friends said everyone's beautiful on the inside, but I'm like, okay, talking to him, he seems cool. He seems pretty intelligent. And intelligence is something that's really important to me. Um, so we're talking, via text, and finally he's like, oh, do you want to talk on the phone? So I'm like, sure. And this should have been a red flag. There's a couple of things that should have been red flags. One, he was not an iPhone user. Yes, I'm a bit of an Apple snob, but in certain instances, like if it's a friend, I think it usually sparks conversation. Like, we'll debate and argue Apple versus Android, whatever. But if it's someone, a romantic prospect, I'm just like, why? What? Something has to be wrong with you. There's something that I'm gonna find out, and it's gonna be something crazy, and I'm not gonna like it. Um, but so that was the first thing. Then, though he's not an iPhone user, I never found out what phone he has. I think he had an Android of some kind. He did have a Mac, and he was talking about like how something wasn't working. He's like, maybe I have to install the latest software, and he said, "El Captain." Now, if I remember correctly, because it's been a little while, I think we're on Sierra. It was El Capitan, right? And he said El Captain, and I was like, oh, El Capitan, whatever. Like, I didn't even say it, or I don't think I said it in a condescending, like, it was just like, oh, is that what you meant? Like, I was confused for a second, and I was like, okay, I think you meant this. And he's like, no, it's El Captain. Like, he was the one sounding condescending, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's an I between the P and the T. So anyway, as we were talking, he seemed cool, and I don't know, after that, I was like, I don't know. I just didn't necessarily like his tone, but he still seemed like the conversation was good enough. Like, I laughed and stuff like that, and that's also really important. Um, And then he like really wanted to hang out, but I was at home for a weekend. I'd been in Georgia for like 3 weeks, and then I was gonna go to Montenegro for 2 weeks, but I came back to New York briefly. And it's still really weird being not in New York, because I always say here meaning New York, but it's not here. But anyway, so I went back there to New York, and I had plans to hang out with a friend, but I ended up like making it work. You know, he was wanted to do something really casual, and it would have been my first like app initiated date with a stranger. And since it was like casual, not something like super fancy, I was like, hey, do you mind if I just like bring one of my friends along? Because I'm not totally comfortable meeting a stranger. Like, I don't feel like we talked long enough, and I feel like there is a point where sometimes, you know, you've talked enough, even if it hasn't been a long time, and sometimes you learn more about the person in person. But you know, I was really hesitant. This was my first this was my first date, like, period. So I went out with my friend. You know, she went with us, and first it started off pretty badly because it took her forever to get to me, and then it took us forever to get to him, because so New York City, the MTA on the weekends can be a pain. Like, it can be really bad. Like, things are rerouted, and it's really annoying. So we finally get to him. My friend is not enamored by his appearance. She was like, you know, maybe he cleans up nice. Not really. And it was just, I don't know, it was really awkward. We get there, and so I understand him not paying for me, or offering to pay for me, I guess, because I also had my friend. So would it be like, oh, I'm paying for you and your friend? And I'm not one of those people who, like, you know, the guy definitely has to pay. I'm just like, all right, whatever, we'll see how things go. I don't mind splitting. I don't know if I'll necessarily treat you. It depends on our, like, how much I like you. Depends on, you know, whatever's going on. But I don't mind, like, splitting, you know, whatever. And so that was a red flag in my friend's book, though. She was just, or like, that was just like, no. So he's over 21. So he got a beer. We were 18 and 19, if I remember correctly. So it's just like, all right, no. So we're searching around for food, and as we're looking, he sees a Domino's table, and he's like, oh, I haven't played Domino's in a long time. He's Jamaican and Trini, and he's like, he spent summers in, I forget which one, I think Jamaica. And, so it's just like, oh, I haven't played since I've been there. And it's just like, oh, okay, that's cool. You know, and while he got food, and he was happy with that, and we're like, okay, well, we're gonna keep looking. And he's like, okay, great, I'm gonna go check out the Domino's table. We get back with our food. He's in the middle of a game. Now, I don't know if you know, but a Domino's game is really long. So it was just us sitting and eating, him playing, and I was like, all right. But then it was still some time later, and he was still playing, and it was just like, okay, is this ever gonna end? Will you cut it early because you're kind of supposed to be hanging out with us? No? Okay. So then my friend and I start texting back and forth, and she's like commenting on his playing. I think he said something. He's like, oh, you know, I'm just killing it, I'm winning. And she's like, I'm pretty sure he just made a face because he lost. And so that also meant he played more than one round of dominoes. And there was something she said that made me burst out laughing. And he all of a sudden started paying attention. She's like, oh, what's going on? And I was like, you know, Kiki just made me laugh. She's being Kiki. And he's like, oh, what'd she say? And he was like, you know, what'd she say? And Kiki jumped in, and she's like, oh, I'm just like, you know, texting, commenting on the people around us. And he's like, oh, that's so shady. Well, there's nothing else to do. And then he goes right back to the game, though. And, he just keeps playing for hours, guys, literally hours. Kiara leaves for a bit to go get us, like, refills on our drinks, and then the people, his opponents, leave too. So we're actually by ourselves. Nothing happens. I think I tentatively was just like, so, ... I don't remember exactly what I said, but I brought up something, and he was kind of talking, but he was distracted, looking for more opponents. It was at least 3 hours that we just sat there, like, okay. So Kiki actually had a party that night to go to. So, you know, he knew that I had nothing going on that day. So Kiki, she was like, oh, hey, you know, I'm ready. Like, we're gonna head out, you know, start getting ready, yada, yada, yada. So he's like, oh, okay, I'll walk you guys to the train station. And as we're walking back, he kind of starts up conversation, but it's a little late now. And Kiki she was not feeling him. So, she, we're just walking, and now the thing is, someone suggested, like, maybe because she was guiding me, but I was, like, on his side. She was in between us initially, but we changed that, and I don't know, it was just weird. And so we walk back to the train station. We give that awkward, like, arm around the shoulder hug, that half hug. That's not even, I don't know, it's not even a half hug. It's a tapping of shoulders, or just whatever. And he turns to hug Kiki, and she does not look happy. So he backs down, and he's like, oh, your hair is interesting. So Kiki, she's in one of my older videos, I think 16 maybe, or maybe 18. I think it might be 18, but she's in a few of my older videos actually. And she, so she's albino. She has really thick hair, and she usually wears it in puffs. Her hair is, like, pretty coarse. And he was just like, oh, it's interesting. She's like, oh, interesting how? Like, what do you mean? And it was very aggressive, because she was not happy with him. He's like, oh, it's nice, interesting, nice. And it definitely throws people off, because, as I said, it's coarse, it's thick. She's albino, so it's also blonde. Some people think she's culturally appropriating, but she's part Jamaican, so there's no appropriation there. It is all natural. Yes, I felt the need to just stick that in there. Because I think that's kind of what he didn't know what to do with her. He didn't know that she was albino. So he was just like, okay. So later on that night, he calls me. He's like, oh, so Kiki didn't like me. And I was like, no. And he said something. He said, like, oh, well, like, she's a butthead or something. And I'm just like, first, that was so juvenile. And then second, it's just like, we went on one date that did not go so well. And you're talking about one of my closest friends. So suffice to say, that didn't go over very well. I left for Montenegro like 3 days later. And so we couldn't text anymore. We were talking on Kik, but I was very, like, scarce, and eventually just stopped responding. And guys, YouTube, world, whatever countries are watching this video, he still texted me up to New Year's, like, from the summer of August 2016. He'd still text me, hey, hi, how's it going, how you do? Like, what's going on? Last September, he's like, if you don't like me, just say something, yada, yada, yada. And then he sent me another hey. And then he sent me Happy New Year's, like, on the 1st of this year. It's just, I don't know. But anyway, so we move on from Domino's, and we have CVS. This is going to be long, for the record. So we move on from Domino's, and we have CVS. I met this dude, so during the summers, I don't stay in the dorm, I stay home. And so when I come back to the dorm, it's Labor Day weekend, and I didn't have all of my dishes and silverware and stuff like that. So I just bought a few paper plates until my mom could, bring me my additional stuff. So I go to CVS, and this person's like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you around in a while. He's like, I've usually helped you before. And I was like, yeah, I dorm around here. I explain all of that. And he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. So we're getting stuff. And as I'm leaving, he's like, so when will you be back? And I was like, the next time I need something. And he kind of, like, laughs it off. And I'm like, okay, bye. And I walk out, and halfway down the block, I was just like, oh, I think he wanted me to come back. Like, he wanted there to be something more. I completely missed that. I can be really oblivious, guys. So I actually returned the next day, and he was like, oh, we talked, and he was like, oh, yeah, you're back, and he was like, oh, you should come back, whenever, like, I'd love to talk to you some more. So, of course, I went back, and so I still remember the awkwardness of this, actually. One of his friends, I walked in, and she was like, oh, hey, are you looking for Sadiq? And I was like, I guess, I mean, he usually assists me. And she kind of laughed at me. She's like oh, you're so adorable laugh. And she's like, yeah, he totally forgot that, he wasn't working, today, this week. But he'll be here again on Sunday. She's like, so did you need anything? And I felt obligated to buy something because, after kind of stumbling through that, I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna get whatever. Um, Super awkward. And, so I go back again, third time, and he takes down my number, and I was like, is he gonna message me? Is he gonna message me? And then I also lose my keys that night. My wallet fell out of my pocket once, and someone called me back, thank God. And then I also lost my keys, which I've never found. And I actually really, I had a nice cool keychain on that one. But anyway, so, he messages me like a day or so later, and we're talking for a bit, and we have plans to hang out, but then he cancels because he has to do something with his mom or whatever. And then the next week, he doesn't talk at all about hanging out again. And he messages me like the next week, and he's like, oh, okay, this is Friday night. He texts me, and he's like, let's hang out tomorrow morning. Let's go to Central Park. And I'm like, I'm on a bus to DC right now. If you'd messaged me with a little bit more notice. But I was like, all right, maybe sometime this coming week. But he was like, I don't get paid this week. And I was like, oh, it's fine. I don't mind treating you. And he's like, no, I wouldn't disrespect you like that. And sorry, now I'm just fiddling with my music. But he's like, yeah, no, I wouldn't disrespect you like that. And I'm like, it's cool, but you know what? Okay, thanks. And I'm like, hey, do you want to have an actual phone conversation sometime soon? And I'm really usually not the one who puts herself out there like that. I don't initiate things, but I was like, yeah, he seems cool. Let's have a phone convo, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, sure. And then nothing ever comes of it. He never mentions hanging out again. We never, we still talk occasionally, but even then he disappears for a while. And he texts me back some days later. He's like, sorry, I got busy, whatever. So then after, I think we don't talk for a month, and he texts me, and he's like, hey, how's it going? And, he's like, I'm sorry, yada, yada, yada. I had things to do. And then he's just like, hey, so he starts asking me about, if I hear about any jobs, can I tell him about it? Because apparently he got fired from CVS, and I was like, oh, what happened? Or I don't remember exactly how it came out that he was fired, but he didn't tell me initially. I figured it out. And he was like, yeah, but he owned up to, he's like, yeah, I was fired. And I was like, what happened? And he refused to tell me. I wondered if it was something of a sexual nature, because the only thing I could think of was stealing. And he's like, oh, just guess. And I'm like, I really don't want to guess. And he's like, no, come on, guess. And I'm just like, all right, fine. Was it stealing? He was like, no, something else. And I'm just like, all right, just tell me. I guessed as you wanted. And so I don't know exactly what it was, but I just, conversation died after that. Then he texts me on New Year's of last year, 2017. And he's like, hey, sorry, I just, my phone broke, and I didn't have a phone. I couldn't get in contact with anyone, yada yada. I just had an old phone to use. I didn't have my it was just a bunch of words. And he was like, but I really want to continue talking to you. Maybe you can take me out to lunch. You could actually, no, before we even get there, I guess this was his small talk. He's like, how's your vision? And I'm just like, it hasn't changed since I talked to you 3 months ago. But then he's like, yeah, maybe you can take me out to eat, treat me to lunch. And I was not feeling that. So he kept calling me and texting me, and, initially I was like, okay, I'm going to call him. But then it just started to get weird. He left me a few voice messages. He was like, please, I just want to talk. He was like, it doesn't have to be anything more. I just want to be your friend. And it was just weirding me out a little bit. I think if he'd just given me a day, if he just left me a little bit of time to think about it, I don't know, nothing would have happened, I'm sure of that. But I would have at least gotten back to him. I would not have been treating him, but I would have gotten back to him, talked to him, heard him out. But he just kept on calling, and it just started to give me stalker vibes. So I ended up blocking him. So we have CVS, Domino's down. I met another guy who conversation was great. Our banter via text was fun. I'll call him Al. That's actually I think his nickname or whatever. So conversation was great. We established a rapport pretty quickly via text, But we went out, we talked a lot. I was a little bored, but not too bad. We got drinks from Starbucks and we just sat in Madison Square Park and we were just talking. It was really nice. We talked for hours about religion, whatever else. He walked me back to my dorm because, it's pretty near. And then we just never talked again. And I was just like, oh, okay. I think we're still friends on Facebook. So then there's another dude. I don't care. Well, no, I'll call him Joe because that's what I called him in my blog. So I'll put a link to this story in it so you can get the full details. But this guy, Joe, almost said his actual name. We were messaging, and he had sent me something like about a picture, or he sent me a photo, not about a picture. He sent me a photo, and I was like, hey, sorry, I'm visually impaired, so I have no idea what this image is. And he was like, oh, I didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming. I thought that was funny. He didn't get my vision humor. And he's like, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can date a blind person because his dog is going blind and he doesn't think he can do that. And I'm just like, a human and a dog are different people. And he's like, I know, but yada, yada, yada. And it was just, it didn't work out, obviously. And I probably, as I say in the blog post, I'm like, I probably should have asked him more. Probably should have tried to dissuade him, maybe. Like, hey, you don't know what you're missing. Like, blind people, we're pretty cool. We're not too, maybe there's certain things that I can't do. Like, maybe we shouldn't go play laser tag. I haven't actually gone to play laser tag, so I don't know if that's whatever. But anyway, but it's just like you're just not giving it a chance. You're writing off a whole group of people because of your dog, bro. But yeah, so for more of that story, I'll put the link to my blog in the description. All right, so we've got 2 more guys. I think I can get this in under half an hour. All right, so actually 3 more guys because I want to mention my friend Noah. So next dude I meet, we're texting, and he just talks a lot. My first issue was that he's a libertarian, and I'm not very much into politics, but when he was just talking, it was very, I was like, all right, I definitely, while I don't actively do much with politics, I'm definitely more Democratic leaning because I disagreed with a lot of things that he said. And consequently, I just didn't talk that much because I don't have much to argue, the grounds of politics on, because, I don't pay too much attention. After Trump was elected, I have been more updated on the news and what's going on, but that's just because I'm kind of, inundated with it. No matter where you turn, it's just, Trump did this, and GOP, and just whatever. So, but I tried not to, and that frustrated him a lot. And he talked about things, and he's like, oh, I'm not even sure if it's going to, make sense. And I'm like, it's going to make sense. I'm just not going to have much to respond to. He wasn't a reader. I liked reading. He basically, I think he did construction or whatever, and he thought a lot of the things that I was into, and even, he always talked about his friends, so he finally started asking about mine, and he's like a lot of their majors he felt was, frivolous, or, what are you going to do with that? I have a friend who's an art major, someone else who's doing sociology and Black studies, I'm doing creative writing, and, well, we're going to figure out psychology, but creative writing versus, construction, which is concrete. And, what are you going to do with a sociology major? Well, she's going to do more. She's going to law school. This is just her bachelor's, her undergrad, and regardless, she's got her life plan going on. And one of my friends who also went to culinary arts school, and I wasn't sure if I was going to say culinary school or culinary. I didn't know what I was going to say. Anyway, so, it was really annoying. And we hung out a few times, and he was just very caught up on my vision, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Because I get it. If you've never met a visually impaired blind person before, then I completely get it. But at a certain point, it wasn't weird or annoying. So we went to the movies, and I had audio description, which I'll get back to. I want to make a video on that, but I had audio description on, and And sorry, I've been talking for so long, I'm losing my train of thought. Oh yeah, okay, I was using audio description. And he was just like, "Oh, this is so weird. Like I can't imagine using this." And he said that more than once. And he's like, "I can't imagine like not seeing the screen." Well, if you're blind, you kind of would have no choice, dude. And again, like I get the novelty of it all. I get it. I do. But 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 can you not talk about it like I'm this crazy wonder, like this strange creature? Like I don't know, like find some balance. Like I get it. The first time was like, okay, I think, you think it's a little weird, and I can see it, I can get that. But the third time, really? Or we were gonna go to a restaurant afterward, and he was like, he felt awkward. He's like, let's go somewhere where you know the menu. So he's like, I've never read a menu to someone, so I actually could have pulled it up on Google. But I was just like, all right, whatever. Like, I was kind of done. And he still texted me, and I've kind of responded a little bit. But it's just like, it's, I haven't responded in a while. And that's usually how things, like, end. Like, I try to say something, but sometimes I'm just like, I really just don't even want to talk anymore, because I don't think you would get it. And maybe that's not the best approach, but it's what I do. Um, if you remember in that last video, I think I told you, about almost sitting on someone, and he was just like, "Oh my god, that seems so embarrassing," and he was going on and on about it, and I was just like, all right, I'm telling you the story, and I'm laughing as I tell you the story, because I think it's kind of funny. Like, it's not this crazy ordeal to me, like, yes, it was pretty awkward and embarrassing in the moment, but I got over it. you know so 2 more. It's gonna be slightly over 30, guys, I'm sorry. My friend Noah, who started off as sort of a romantic something, but we're quirky friendship now. I've got a blog post on him too, and this other dude who I'm about to tell you about. But I just want to throw him in there as just like, there are some cool people. Now, this next guy, I feel really awkward talking about him now because his name is in the post. But he got on my nerves. He was really cool, really intelligent, but he was a sociology major, and he turned everything to race. And so to an extent, I get it, because America's a really racial country, and especially in this time, like, race is pretty prominent. And saying even pretty prominent is kind of an understatement. But it's just like, it's like, I don't know, like, let's say, this is just the first thing that's coming to mind. Let's say someone missed the bus, like a black woman was standing at the bus stop, or she was running to catch the bus and she missed it. It'd be like, well, as a black woman in America, the chances of not having caught that bus, like, it was very likely that it was a white driver. And, it's just like, all right, not everything comes down to race. A lot of things do, don't get me wrong, but not everything. Some of it was interesting, like, we talk about Asians being the ideal minority. Everyone looked up to them. They're like, oh, like, you don't understand the struggles of being a minority. But even though more often than not they're well off, Asian people are sort of well off, like, they're still not white, and they still go through, the issues of not being white. It might be a little different, but, so like I said, it got interesting, but race just wasn't everything. And when we weren't talking about race, it was, so I feel like he felt that the world was out to get him. He'd always call him, like, this person was, like, talking about this, and, as him being a black man in America, and his mom's friends were talking, like, he was always upset about something. And that's basically what we talked about. Like, there was never, I talk a lot, as evidenced by the length of this video. And, he, a conversation is supposed to be a give and take, but he talked, I feel like, more than I did. And he didn't really need me. I was sort of just, like, as a sounding board. And, after a certain point, it's just like, frankly, my dears, I did not give a damn. I hope someone gets that reference. And, so eventually it just kind of fizzled out. I stopped talking to him. We were supposed to hang out one day. I wasn't feeling too well. So I just, like, didn't respond when he texted me, which I know, horrible. But I knew we'd had a conversation that, I told him about Domino's. And he was like, oh, like, that's crazy. Like, if a girl doesn't want to talk to me, like, I'm not going to keep going after her. After, I'll try to contact her maybe once or twice more. And if she doesn't respond, like, that's it. And true to form, so I guess we were gonna hang out like just before he left to go to I think it was Sweden. Um, and he was, he texted me after he came back. He was like, "Hey," and then he sent me like a few days later a link to this like party, a Christmas party, and I just didn't respond, and that was the end of that. So I did discover like during the span of our courtship is too strong a word, but like I did learn that he had ADHD, and I looked up the symptoms to that, and I knew that part of it was, so sometimes I'd talk to him and I feel like it'd just go completely over his head, like, or he might have been tentatively listening, but he didn't always like register all of it, and he was just very self-focused, self-centered, and I was just not into that. So that was that. And like beyond the guys that I met in person, like there were the people I told you about, like Joe, who didn't feel like he could date blind people. There were other people who I just texted and it didn't go anywhere beyond the text message. Like one guy, we texted for a while, then we stopped talking, and then he texted me again some months later. And I remember there was one point where I hadn't responded to him for a few hours, and he's like, "Oh, you need to make time for me." And I was just like, "Excuse me? We're not in a relationship, and you only recently re-entered my life." So even in a relationship like that, it just wasn't cool. And there was another dude that I met years ago, through one of those like phone chat things that my friends and we used to have fun like taking turns like joking with people, pretending to be other people. Yes, I know. I got to exercise my accents though, and so he reappeared in my life last year. Everybody was just reappearing last year. And we were talking, but he was moving very quickly. I knew he didn't have a lot of friends and stuff like that, which is something he pointed out to me. So he had kind of a lot of time on his hands, and I felt like he emphasized it a lot. He emphasized how shy he was, but in text message, on the phone he did, but in text message, he was kind of like, I said something to him, and he's like, "Oh, don't talk to your future boyfriend like that." And I kind of like, I was just like, we've barely been speaking, so that's a little forward. But on the other hand, I kind of liked it. I liked that but I didn't like that on the phone. It was like a completely different person. And then he was talking about long distance. He lives in Detroit. I live in New York. I'm not even too thrilled about long distance, like within the same state. Like if someone is 7 hours away, in Buffalo or Albany, so it's just like, oh, I think Albany's 4 hours away. But anyway, so it's just, none of these things have worked out. At this point, I've deleted the dating apps, and I'm just going to see what fate tosses my way now, if anything. And of course, I'll keep you guys informed. Honestly, I waited so long to accumulate, to tell all of these stories. One, because when I first started the dating apps, like, I was embarrassed. And then, I also just fell into not making videos, the habit of like, okay, I should make a video about this, and just never doing it. So yeah, but I will keep you guys better informed on my life, and I will include those blog links. I always get blog and vlog mixed up. The words are too similar. Yeah. So have a good weekend, guys.